Nathan Winters stood at the doorway of the living room, his mind heavy with thoughts as his eyes scanned the house. Every corner, every object seemed to evoke memories of a life that had once been warm and filled with love. But now, it felt like a cold, empty space, where love and trust had been stolen. It had been 3 days since he returned from his extended business trip, and the small signs he had ignored before were now glaringly obvious before him. Through the window, he saw the shadow of Samantha, his wife, gliding past the living room. Her long hair shimmered like golden threads under the light, but there was something in the way she moved that sent a chill down his spine. It wasn't grace, but urgency, as if she were deliberately avoiding his gaze. What was she doing in this house when Nathan wasn't around? The question swirled in his mind, occupying his thoughts. Yet he couldn't find an answer. He stepped into the room, where Samantha was preparing dinner. The smell of food filled the air, but it couldn't erase the sense of unease in his chest. The dim light illuminated her face, and Nathan felt the coldness of her presence seep into every corner of his heart. Everything he had known about Samantha, the loving wife, the faithful partner, now seemed to be crumbling. "What are you doing?" Nathan spoke, his voice low and heavy, not with the care he used to show, but with suspicion. Samantha froze, turning to look at him. "You're back? I'm just making dinner. You're not going to tell me about David's trip?" Nathan couldn't hold back anymore. The emotions he had bottled up came rushing out. "You thought I didn't know? I've seen everything, Samantha." She stood frozen, her eyes widening with panic. A long silence stretched between them. "You don't understand," Samantha stammered, but Nathan had lost patience. He walked toward her, grabbed the phone from the table, unlocked it, and opened the messages. No further explanations were needed. The sweet words, the photos, the promises between her and David appeared clearly on the screen. "So, this is what is going on?" Nathan said, his voice cold, not with anger, but with a painful understanding. "So, it is you and David." He paused, unable to finish the sentence, his eyes locking with hers, those eyes he once loved, now empty, distracted, and lifeless. Samantha couldn't say anything. She lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't justify it. She couldn't say anything anymore. Everything was too clear. Nathan sighed, stepping back. Part of him wanted to let go, to walk away, to leave it all behind. But another part of him, one he couldn't control, wanted to retaliate, to make all of them, those who had betrayed him, pay. And in that moment, a thought sparked in Nathan's mind. He wouldn't just make Samantha pay, but David too, the man who had taken everything he loved. The plan for revenge began here, in this moment, right in the room where betrayal had blossomed. Nathan didn't just want to break his relationship with his wife. He wanted David to pay with everything he had. He looked at Samantha one last time, the final time. "I am no longer yours," Nathan said, and as he walked out of the room, he knew that his life would never be the same again. Nathan sat still in the armchair, gazing out the window where the evening light cast soft, fading streaks on the wall. Everything in the house reminded him of the past memories that now he could only see through the fog of pain. He remembered the days before his work had consumed all his time and attention. The mornings spent waking up early to have a cup of coffee with Samantha. The peaceful evenings spent together, listening to her ramble on about things that had no ending, but were always filled with love and care. In the early years of their marriage, Nathan and Samantha were inseparable. They had gone through thick and thin, building their careers together, raising 2 children, and living a perfect love. Samantha had always been the devoted wife, the attentive mother, and the partner Nathan had been proud of. He had believed that no matter what came their way, they would overcome it together. But gradually, things began to change as Nathan buried himself in his work. Long business trips, stressful meetings, important financial decisions, all of it made him forget the little things at home. He didn't realize that with each passing day, Samantha was feeling more distant. She never complained, never blamed him. She just silently watched him, waiting. But then those quiet evenings and unspoken spaces created an unbearable loneliness in her heart. "I understand," Samantha had said to him many times, whenever he returned, sighing from the stress of work. But Nathan didn't know that this understanding was slowly turning into a crack in their relationship. Samantha began seeking small joys elsewhere. She attended parties, met friends, and then one day, she met David Lancaster, Nathan's boss. David appeared in Samantha's life like a breath of fresh air, offering her the attention that Nathan could no longer provide. Every time they met, Samantha felt seen, heard, and valued. David wasn't a perfect man, but his words always came at the right time, making her feel like she was the center of his world. Gradually, David's presence went from being a small shift in her life to something she couldn't live without. Nathan didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. He was consumed with work, endless phone calls and meetings, while his wife drifted further away. Her phone calls had changed. Samantha no longer shared everything with him. She no longer opened up. Instead, there were long silences, short answers, and indifferent words. That's when Nathan began to feel the shift. One evening, after an extended business trip, Nathan returned home early, hoping to set up a cozy family dinner. But as he walked into the house, the silence hit him like a heavy weight. Samantha wasn't in the living room, yet there was no sign of a meeting or a friend visiting. Nathan wondered, where is she? He quietly walked upstairs and froze when he saw Samantha's phone on the table. For some reason, a powerful urge to open it washed over him. It was a decision he would never forget. The messages on Samantha's phone hit him like a slap across the face. Every text, every sweet word exchanged between Samantha and David felt like cold water being poured onto Nathan's heart. They weren't just discussing work. They were talking about love, promises, things Nathan could never have imagined. I miss you. We'll meet tonight. Those words were glaringly bright and painful, like a painting of betrayal Nathan had never wanted to see. Nathan stood motionless in the dark, the glow from the phone illuminating his face. He felt dizzy, as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. But when he looked down at the phone, he knew this was no dream. This was the truth. Samantha was no longer the woman he loved. She had gone too far, and now he had to face it. The feeling of loss and betrayal flooded through him. The sweet years, the happy memories, now seemed like shattered pieces that could never be put back together. But instead of giving up, Nathan felt another fire ignite within him, a determination, a plan. He wouldn't let himself be the loser in this game. And in that moment, a dark thought flashed across his mind. If she can betray me, then I'll make them both pay. Nathan couldn't grasp what he was experiencing. He sat there, holding the phone, while the intimate messages between Samantha and David cut into his heart like knives. Everything seemed to crumble in an instant. The room became so quiet that he could hear his own heartbeat racing. Pain, anger, and disillusionment surged within him, drowning him as if he were falling into an endless abyss. He sat silently in the dark, the light from the phone casting a faint glow on his disappointed face. His whole life, his family, now felt like nothing more than lies and betrayal. The times he traveled, the nights he thought Samantha was waiting for him, turned out to be nights she spent with another man. David Lancaster, his boss, was the one who had stolen his wife, the one he had thought was the love of his life. Nathan couldn't breathe. He thought back to the days when Samantha looked at him with love and trust. They had been the ideal couple, admired by friends and colleagues alike. But now everything had changed. Samantha had changed. No more tender looks, no more genuine words of love. All that remained was distance, coldness, and secrets she had kept hidden. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway, followed by the door opening. Samantha returned, walking into the house. She passed through the living room without looking at him once. Nathan stood up, gripping the phone tightly, his mouth dry. He walked over to her, saying nothing, only staring into her eyes. Samantha jumped, surprised to see Nathan standing there. He couldn't believe what he was about to say. Everything within him felt blurred, but the truth was glaringly clear. "Can you explain this to me?" Nathan said, his voice deep and cold. "You thought I didn't know?" Samantha stepped back, her face pale. She didn't say anything, just stood there, awkwardly. Her eyes met his, then quickly averted. You don't understand, she said in a trembling voice, but Nathan could hear the panic in her words. No, Yuri, the one who doesn't understand. Nathan stepped closer, still holding the phone, its light flashing like an accusation. The messages, Samantha, the promises, the meetings you never told me about. She lowered her head, unable to look him in the eye. Nathan's anger exploded. So, this is what's going on? How long has it been between you and David? He ground each word out, as though searching for an answer he knew would never come. Samantha didn't say a word, standing still, no longer trying to argue, no longer making excuses. She knew that every explanation was now meaningless. Nathan felt as though he were being shoved off a cliff, where everything that had once been his was now gone. Nathan wanted to break the silence, to scream, to punch the table in front of him, but instead, he froze, choked with confusion and pain. You betrayed me. With my own boss, Samantha. His voice cracked, as though each word he uttered was a blow to his soul. Once again, Samantha couldn't respond, only quietly wiping the tears falling down her cheeks. But that only deepened Nathan's pain. What had she done to their marriage, to everything he had built? The past days, the business trips, the late nights spent working, everything seemed meaningless now. Every time he thought of his family, of Samantha, his mind wandered back to work, to the calls and emails left unanswered. He hadn't noticed, hadn't seen the loneliness in her eyes. The feeling of disappointment burned like a fire, consuming all the trust he had left. Nathan felt as though he were standing on the edge of a cliff, and in that moment, all he could do was stare at Samantha, the wife he had once loved and trusted, now reduced to nothing but betrayal. Yuri no longer my wife, Nathan said, each word piercing both their hearts like a knife. She has gone too far, and I won't let myself lose in this game. And in that moment, with everything now laid bare, Nathan made his decision. He wouldn't just stand idly by and endure this betrayal. A plan for revenge had begun to take shape in his mind, a plan that would not only end his marriage but also bring about the downfall of those who had wronged him. Nathan stood frozen in front of Samantha, unable to believe what had just happened. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of David's betrayal, someone he had once respected as a mentor, a colleague. But now, David was not just the one who had stolen his wife. He was a fraud, a contemptible man. Rage surged within him like a powerful wave, washing away the last rational thoughts he had clung to. You can't do this to me, Samantha, Nathan whispered, but his voice was filled with authority and coldness. Each word felt like a slap in her face. Samantha looked at him, her eyes red from crying, but she couldn't say a word. Her apologies were too late. Nathan no longer cared about her excuses. All he could see was the betrayal. He turned and walked away, not sparing Samantha another glance. Each step was a move further from everything he had once loved. A past life had ended, and now there was only a man determined to take control of his own destiny. His plan had been brewing for some time, but now it wasn't just a dream. It was a reality, a revenge he would carry out without mercy. Every move, every action would make the betrayers pay. David Lancaster would not escape, and Samantha, no matter how much she hurt, would live with the consequences of her own choices. Meanwhile, Samantha sat there, dazed like someone cornered with no way out. The tears continued to fall, but they couldn't change anything. She had betrayed the man she had once loved, and now she had to face the consequences. Nathan couldn't stand to look at her anymore. He decided to step out, calling Olivia, the only person he could trust right now. Olivia was an old friend from college, a skilled lawyer. She had helped him in the past, and now she would help him with his plan. The call ended, and Olivia arrived almost immediately. She saw the cold look in Nathan's eyes and knew that things had gone too far. I know what you want, Nathan, Olivia said, her voice firm yet full of sympathy. She understood the pain he was going through, but she also knew that this plan was what he needed to feel like he was in control of his life again. David won't stop. I won't let him get away with this, Nathan said, locking eyes with Olivia, determination in his gaze. Olivia nodded, understanding better than anyone what Nathan was feeling. She knew that defeating David wasn't just about strength or words. It had to be strategic. They needed to find his weaknesses and exploit them. They wouldn't just strip David of everything he had. They would make him live with the shame and make him face the collapse of his own empire. Nathan and Olivia began their work. They gathered every piece of information they could about David. Every transaction, every relationship, every secret David had hidden was exposed. Slowly, they uncovered that David wasn't just a man who had an affair, he was also a scam artist, involved in corporate fraud, corruption, and doing anything he could to achieve his goals. These revelations were powerful enough to not only destroy his career but also push him into legal trouble. When everything was in place, Nathan didn't hesitate. He knew the time had come, the time for revenge. He sent the evidence of David's illegal activities to the authorities and spread it across social media. The information spread like wildfire, and immediately David was exposed to the public. His colleagues, partners, and friends all turned their backs on him. David began to panic. Everything he had built over the years was now collapsing. The company he had once led, the deals he had once boasted about, all were being brought into the light. David was no longer the powerful man he once was. And when he turned around and saw Nathan standing there, fear was evident in his eyes. "You can't escape, David," Nathan said. His voice no longer filled with anger but with cold finality, as if everything had already been decided. "All that you've done, all you've taken from me, now comes with a price." David couldn't speak. His excuses, his apologies, became meaningless in the face of the truth Nathan had revealed. He had nothing left but disgrace and fear. When it was all over, when everything had been dealt with, Nathan stood alone, amidst the wreckage he had created. He didn't feel joy, nor satisfaction. All he had was an emptiness. The sense of loss was still there, but at least he had regained control of his life. And that, perhaps, was enough. The next morning, Nathan woke up to an eerie silence. The house still looked the same as every other day, but he knew everything had changed forever. He stepped outside, feeling the first rays of the morning sun brush against his face, but it couldn't soothe the swirling emotions within him. The feeling of loss mixed with victory, yet it was incomplete. Yes, he had regained power, taken his revenge, but the cost had been steep. Samantha was still there, in the house that no longer held the warmth of the memories they once shared. She didn't speak, only stood quietly, watching him from the living room doorway. Those eyes, once a source of comfort and strength in his life, now held nothing but distance and coldness. Any apologies she might offer seemed meaningless. Nathan knew no matter what he did, he couldn't go back to the past. He and Samantha had reached a crossroads that could never be undone. He looked at her one last time, then turned and walked out the door. Samantha didn't call him back, didn't try to stop him. The years they spent together now felt like a distant dream. A part of Nathan felt the emptiness, but another part felt relief. His life couldn't continue as it had. He knew he had to move forward, though he didn't know where that path would lead. Outside, the sunlight shone fresh and bright, as if it were unaware of what had just transpired inside the house. Nathan no longer felt alone, nor was he tormented by the harsh truths. He felt free, though the price had been high. He knew that, despite the pain, life had to go on. Olivia called him soon after everything had settled. Her voice was full of sympathy but also strength. "You did the right thing, Nathan. David will never recover from this, and Samantha she'll have to face the consequences of her actions." Nathan didn't reply immediately, staring silently out the window. "I don't need to see them suffer. They've destroyed themselves," he said, his tone cold but filled with truth. "Now I just want a chance to start over, to live, to rebuild from scratch." Olivia paused for a moment before speaking again. "You made the right choice, Nathan. Don't let the past hold you back from your future." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. The feeling of relief began to replace the emptiness inside him. Everything now wasn't about pain or revenge. It was just about him, a man who could start over, even without the perfect life he once imagined. The weeks passed quietly. Nathan continued with his work, finding passion again in new projects. He was no longer haunted by old memories, no longer forced to see the face of the wife who had betrayed him every day. Instead, he began to build a new life, a life that he could control, no longer dependent on anyone else's acceptance. One day, as he sat in his office looking out the large window, Nathan realized that he had truly overcome everything. He no longer carried those negative emotions inside him. Though the ending of his life wasn't perfect, at least he had found the strength to keep going. There was still so much ahead of him, and while he didn't know what challenges awaited, Nathan knew he was ready to face them. What had come before was the past, and now only the future remained, a future that he would build himself, free from betrayal and pain. As the sunset descended, Nathan stood up and walked out of his office. The sky outside the window remained bright, and in his heart, a new hope began to take root. He knew that life was still full of possibilities, and most importantly, he would never go back to the mistakes of the past.